Amazing. So I'm here with a good friend, Manuel Godoy from Felix Pago. We invested in Felix Pago in the pre-seed back in 2021 through our second fund. We met Manuel through mutual friends, and the journey has been fantastic. The idea for this very short, let's call it webinar, is to influence, to inspire other Latinx founders building in the US. And hopefully this short interview will inspire others to take the entrepreneurial leap. So thanks again, Manuel, for being here today and giving us a few of your minutes.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me, Danny. It's been HTwenty has been great partners since those days, since 2021 when we first partnered up. It's been quite a journey, and the interesting part is we're just getting started. So looking forward to the next levels.
Let's keep pushing. And just
Yeah.
to kick off here, the first question that we have, transitioning from a traditional remittance channel to pioneering a tech-driven solution like Felix Pago, it must have been a remarkable journey for you, and especially after you finished your MBA at Wharton. And the question would be, can you share a pivotal moment or a personal anecdote that stands out during this transition, and how did it shape your perspective on entrepreneurship?
Definitely. That's a great question, Danny, and thank you for asking that because it helps explain how we're innovating in this industry. And yeah, precisely. In those early days when we were at business school, my co-founder and I, we spotted the opportunity because we saw that at the time, we're looking at 2019 data, of the $90 billion that was sent from US to Latin America, roughly, and this is a hard number to get to, but roughly between 75 to 80% of these volumes were still originated in cash in stores. So we it was sort of like obvious when you see these numbers and when you see the sheer volume of the market that something needed to be solved, right? And so that's when Bernie and I, my co-founder and I, were started to try to understand this problem, right? So we went out to the streets of Philadelphia and South Philly, which is a neighborhood with a high density of Hispanics, to go to physical stores, standing outside Western Unions to talk to people, right? And we started doing this in South Philly, but when we ended up doing this as well in many places in Pennsylvania. We went to Norristown, went to Passaic, New Jersey, which is another town close by with a lot of Hispanics. We went to the Bronx. Then we started taking trips to California. And really, the whole purpose was to talk to people, understand why this behavior, right? And while we're doing this, we're also trying different ideas, trying different hypotheses on how to really solve the problem. And it was interesting because what we learned was that, and this is, by the way, after talking to hundreds of people outside the Western Unions, we're again bringing potential MVPs, potential solutions that ended up nowhere, because we started learning that we're thinking that we're going to eat the world with different ideas, and we're like, okay, failure. None of these were working. But then after talking with hundreds of folks, the first thing that we realized was that trust is the most important thing in this industry, right? When people go to the store, they really trust that person that is in the store. They trust that they can help them through a transaction. They trust that, again, these are folks that are sending $100, $200, $300 every Friday, but this represents 10, 15, 20% of the paychecks. So they know that if they're going to go to the store, they know if they talk to someone, they know the money's going to get to the other side, right? And they know that if there's a problem, as sometimes there is, either in the sending or sometimes the recipient has an issue collecting the cash, they know who to talk to, right? So that human interaction is key in this industry. And especially for Latinos. I mean, think about you and I are immigrants, and you and I understand the struggles of moving to a different country. These folks, typically they are folks that are, I mean, we're serving the Mexico corridor, and the Mexican immigrant is typically someone that maybe grew up in rural Mexico, didn't have all the opportunities growing up. they distrusted by default the everything that surrounded them in terms of financial services. They come to the US, and everything they try to rely on is whatever their friends or their family tells them about, because that's who they trust. And so their friends or families, they tell them how to go to the store to send money, right? And so trust is super important. But then the second thing that we learned, right, and this is again after seeing many folks sending money, was that folks, we always see that folks would take a picture of the receipt after coming out of the store and send it over WhatsApp to their family member, right? So on one occasion, I met this particular person that we interviewed, was Ramon, and after seeing this behavior, it's like, hey, so what are you doing? And so, well, we need to share the unique ID number. I need to share that with my grandma, so that she can go to the Electra to pick up the cash. And I was seeing how he was doing it. He would took the picture and say, hey, grandma, here's the receipt. Say hello to my brother for me, right? So it'll be like the typical behavior is to commute to the store, stand in line, pay the fees, and go over WhatsApp. And so at that time, after a lot of understanding, it sort of clicked that we needed to build something that emulated the trust that happened in the store, and it was clear that we could do that over WhatsApp. Right? At the end of the day, WhatsApp, I like to say, it's the operating system of the region, right? We do everything on WhatsApp. I believe you and I were connected actually through WhatsApp. And it sort of makes sense. Like, why not? And at the time, this was 2020, 2021. At the time, there were some interesting companies being built on top of WhatsApp, especially in India. So this trend was starting to happen, but nothing like it existed in the US, right? And so we said, why not build that, right? Let's build an experience on WhatsApp that emulated that transaction in the store in a seamless, easy to do way. And we'll collect the money. We'll figure it out, right? We started actually collecting cash, and that's when we started to see that we could, because then we start seeing something magical with the folks that started to send with us. So it was clear to us that this could be the solution that could eventually innovate and make that transition between the traditional remittance channels and a pioneering tech-driven solution that like we're doing. And really the big takeaway, the big sort of like, how did it shape my perspective on entrepreneurship, was that it's all about the user, right? Folks have to go and talk to the users. You gotta really fall in love with the problem, understand it deeply, because it's just not about I'm gonna build an app, I'm gonna digitize remittances. It's about really understanding the needs of these users and the pains, and that's how I think folks can get to build something magical.
I love the story, and particularly around how you leveraged WhatsApp, which is a tool so commonly used in India and Brazil, in Latin America, less used in the US, more and more as it's adopted.
Right.
And you put that piece together with the remittance piece, which has been around for centuries, or at least decades, and it just worked, right? And the product market fit was there. As a user, I use Felix to send funds from US to Mexico. And I remember back in the day when I would have to go to Western Union and make the line in Publix or one of the supermarkets, and it would take 10 minutes to be in line, and then the time that you had to go to the store and drive. And for this second generation Mexican immigrant founder that is working in the United States, and that has maybe an hour a day for lunch break at that industrial warehouse or that office where he or she is working at, it really solves a deep pain point, and time saving for the person that needs to dedicate most of their time for work and family. So very cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So moving along, the second question that I wanted to ask you and pick your brain on. So Felix represents a significant innovation in the remittance industry, particularly in bridging the gap between the US and Mexico. And I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts and motivations as you embarked on this journey with Felix? And if you could share a memorable experience, an anecdote that symbolizes that entrepreneurial endeavor for you as a LatinX founder in the US.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I love this question because, again, it helps me deepen or take a deeper thinking on how we started. And I just explained how we started in this sort of like a scrappy mode of doing things on WhatsApp, and how even those early days we started finding this product market fit, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like you say, like these folks, they have little time in their hands. They're working in construction, for example, and they need to send money right away, and there's an emergency back home, right? But then in those early days, that's when we started to see this product market fit. And product market fit is this term that is thrown around a lot, and it's hard to find a clear definition on it, right? And so you see Paul Graham from Y Combinator talk a lot about it, but then never really kind of like making a deep approach on what's product market fit, right? And what they say is like, it when you feel it. But the way I guess that we felt it back in the day was, I think, in three different ways, right? So one, the fact that folks would use you again and again, right? So we would tell these users, try this service and let me know how it goes, and then organically they would come again and use the service again, right? So to me, that recurrent behavior is key. The second one was virality, right? So even in those early days, we started to see that people that we've never met in our lives starting writing to the bot and saying, hey, can you send $100 to this person in Mexico? Here's the money. And at the time, we were starting to collect money digitally with cards. And so they would pay us, people that we never met in our life. And to me, that was, in those early days, to me, was crazy to think that someone is paying for a remittance service on WhatsApp, right? But then the third one, which is really the most, I think the most inspiring story that we got at the beginning, was the fact that, so we had this user, Ophelia and Teresa, their sisters. They work cleaning houses in Philadelphia, right? And so even exactly to what you were saying, that they typically had limited time. They would go to the Western Union every Friday, right? The Western Union in South Philly would close at 6 p.m. And sometimes they would, rush out to get to the Western Union, right? But then they started learning more and more about Felix. It was funny because even though we knew them, they necessarily didn't trust it at the beginning. It's like, oh, does it work? Let's see. But then they started using it recurrently. And, after a few months, they called us, and Ophelia asks, hey guys, what's your address? And we're like, you were sort of like used to this question because people were thinking always like, okay, where's your store? Right? That was a typical question. Like, where are you guys located? I want us to go see it, right? They need to see that. So we're like, oh, okay. Well, Ophelia, I don't know. Weird question. Why do you need our address for? And she wanted to send us flowers, because she wanted to show us, like, every Friday she was sending money to her family back in Mexico, and they used the money to build a flower farm, right? So the money, the hard work they were putting in every week, cleaning house in Philadelphia, was used to build a business in Mexico. And she wanted to just to show us like how cool, how beautiful the flowers were. And to me, that was a magical moment, because it really told me that we were doing something special, right? We were doing something that was really needed, right? And people felt the trust on Felix, and people, not only they felt the trust, but what we're doing actually created an impact, right? So someone wasn't wasting time going to a store, and they used the money to build a business. And to me, there's nothing more special than that.
I also remember you showed me a screenshot once of a woman that was messaging the chatbot, and she was giving compliments to the chatbot without even knowing that it was a AI enabled chatbot, and the chatbot would just respond, and they would have a conversation, and it really shows the impact and I guess the user experience that Felix is providing to its customers.
Yeah, no, it's so beautiful to build on WhatsApp, because you hear what people say. There was another experience where they knew it was a bot, so they say, I know you're a bot, but I love you. which was very funny to see.
True love. And
True love.
tell me a bit about challenges and opportunities that you've faced. How has your background and experience influenced your approach to entrepreneurship? especially in the context of addressing the unique needs of users in the remittance market?
Yeah, for sure. And the way I like to I guess think about what are the good things that I could bring to Felix and the company and building this is the fact that I am an engineer. So when I was growing up, I've always been that person super passionate about. I would take my dad's VHS at the time and just take it apart, understand what's going on inside, and always kind of like very curious about how these complex systems work. And I was always sort of like that person that was sort of like good at math, and it was sort of like obvious to me that I wanted to be an engineer back then. Um, but then when I was in college, what I realized about uh, learning science and learning engineering, it's just about problem solving, right? It's about knowing that there's something complex out there that you need to take sort of like take apart and break it into pieces and start to solve it in ways um, that are straightforward, right? And so I've always been passionate about building things that are complex, things that could push the boundaries on how we operate, on that really move the needle on how people needs on how people can just live better in general, right? And so everything about around entrepreneurship, I think it's about problem solving, right? And so it's problem solving. Obviously, today, it's always, or at least tech is sort of like the central component of entrepreneurship and innovation, but really, it's so much more than that, right? It's problem solving. It's around working with people. How do you solve problems with the team? How do you solve problems? Working with external people, with partners, with how do you solve the user's problem? How do you understand that, right? And so at some point you start to think everything and maybe thinking about first principles. It's about like really understanding the issues so that you can come up with the right solutions, right? And I think that sort of like engineering background, that technical background, I've always tried to think about systems that way in blocks of and break problems into pieces so that we can get to a solution.
I agree. Fall in love with the pain point and not the solution, and really go out and test the product
Yeah,
as scrappy as it can be, and get feedback from that customer, and then iterate and make that product better to
yeah,
to really generate that retention and that stickiness.
that's right.
How do you see the U.S. Hispanic market in general? We know that it's one of the fastest growing demographics in the U.S. and there's a lot of underrepresented founders in the U.S. Particularly founders that have less resources or have recently moved to the U.S. and don't
Yeah.
know how to navigate that market.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting question, right? Because the the fact of the matter is, if you look at the data, um, the Hispanic ethnicity over the last 10 years, if you see the GDP growth of the US and you break it down by ethnicity, Hispanics are the ones that are contributing the most to the growth of this country, right? So obviously a big component of that is immigration, right? You bring more people, these people bring economic value to the country and help the country grow, right? So the interesting thing is, as you see these numbers, I think there's so much opportunity, right? And so yeah, so obviously the folks that want to build things, and I think the nature of sometimes an immigrant is they're persistent. They're looking to find ways to innovate in different ways. They just work things through all the way, right? And so I think this very nature and understanding the dynamics of the importance of the Latino immigrants, of the Latino population in the US, and understanding the characteristics of an immigrant, really, I think those two should mix into something powerful, right? So what's I think in this country, I think we're in a pivotal moment where products and services are going to be built for this population, right? Just because of the sheer nature of how big this segment is, right? And as Latino immigrants in the US, we're obviously uniquely positioned to innovate in that way, right? To bring that persistence, but to bring that understanding of the culture, understanding of the needs and problems. And maybe we need to think about how do you solve that. That's a big market, right? How do we solve needs for this particular segment? And just to put it in context as well, like if you take the Hispanics in the US, I believe that would be, it's something like the fifth economy in the country, in the world, right? So obviously after US overall, China and India, but I think in comparison to Germany, right? And it'll be bigger. Obviously, it's like 2 or 3 times Brazil. So it's just a sheer magnitude. So I think you start to see a lot of these founders focusing on the Latino market, and it's a big market, right? So I think it's an easy way for us to get started there. But to your point as well, we can't forget, there's limitations. The VC money, all these numbers tell you that VC money gets funded to other ethnicities, and it's hard for the Latinx or for Black communities to get funding. But at the end of the day, really, products win when there is a fit in the market, right? And so if you find that need in the market through problems that you are familiar with, it's going to be easier to get funding, right? And so I invite folks to focus on the problems that they know, to focus on the problems that they know they can solve, they can be passionate about, and knowing that this Latino immigrant in the US, or Latino Hispanic in the US market is so big that I think we should take advantage of that.
And as a Latinx founder yourself, as a Latino, graduating from the United States and living there for a while, what doors or what tools would you recommend to other Latino founders to leverage in building, and perhaps let's give them a few examples of tools that you leverage in the past to circumvent pain points or problems that enabled you to get to where you are?
Yeah, and well, I honestly think this applies to anyone in general, to an entrepreneur, but this is something that that my dad taught me in the early. And some of these things is funny. Like you can't read any entrepreneurship book. Sometimes you just gotta go to talk to your dad or your grandma or whoever is special to you and give you the advice that is really grounded on reality. And so my dad always told me, he's like, who told you this was gonna be easy? Just gotta keep going, right? And so at the end of the day, it's about that. It's about that resilience, that persistence to solve problems. But naturally, I guess to your point, nobody can do entrepreneurship alone, right? It's impossible. Nobody can do anything alone, right? And there's a reality here in the US that for a regular American that was born here, they already have a network here, right? So when we come here, it's hard to build that network, right? So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do my MBA, because I knew that I could expand my network by doing that, and the results are there because that's how I met through some events at school. Well, first of all, that's how I met my co-founder, which was obviously a pivotal moment, I guess, in my career. But that's also how I started getting funding, and then that's also how we got connected to each other, right? So we got connected through our friends, and that's how you ended up investing, right? So obviously, going to those. So in my case, it was an MBA, but you gotta obviously reach out to see where you can grow your network, because by default, a Latinx in the US doesn't have a network, right? By default. So you gotta stretch that comfort zone and go and find how to grow that network. I think that's key. But then once you start doing that, it's obviously how to hold on to that. So even an example here, how many times you and I have spoken about how to get specific partners in the US or in the region, and that's part of obviously the value that a VC can bring, right? It's how can we leverage and extend that network through the partnership that we're together, right? And so obviously once you are comfortable expanding your network, is leverage that and feel comfortable that people are going to help you through the journey, right? Because ultimately, sometimes when people reach out for support, what I say is sometimes they're apologetic because they're using my time. I say, I think this is important, right? I want to help you too, because so many people helped me get to this stage. And so feel comfortable that you can pay forward somehow. And obviously you have to pay forward. I think that's the key as well, because part of the value of a network is how you can, give and receive value from it. But there's not be afraid of asking those connections for help, for support along the way, because nobody can build something complex alone.
Adding to the conversation here, the power of community, the power
Yeah.
of the Latino community in the US is impactful, right? So I've had entrepreneurs that want to relocate from Bogota or Mexico to Miami, asking me or some of the team members for a letter of recommendations to get
Right.
their O1 visas for extraordinary talent approved, or asking us for realtor or location recommendations for where they have to live, or asking us, what's the budget that they have to adapt to hiring their teams, and a bunch of other local nuances and just doors that are opened by being part of the Latino community, and especially by just raising your hand and asking. There's a lot of resources available, and hopefully this short video interview with Manuel was helpful for some of the audience members that they will be hearing. And if you want to reach out to Manuel or to myself or any of the team members at HTwenty or Felix on your journey to emigrating to the US, definitely reach out. And thanks again, Manuel, for your time today.
Thank you, Danny. I really enjoyed this.